Hello, welcome back. Welcome back and good evening. I'm John, old YouTuber. I have charged the camcorder a little bit more than 1 hour and I just made my Danish video on this war in Ukraine. It's day 118 and I'm ready to continue, but that's not the Mercedes-Benz W191. I already read that. Just made a video for like 40 minutes. I was updating my read list, so I'm not going to talk about that. But I made a new read list about engines, all kind of engines, model engines, single, four-stroke engines, compressors, jet engines. I need to download that. And diesel engines, diesel fuel. So this one I like to read through, but we need to finish this Mercedes. So actually we could finish this in 2 days maybe. So now we need to do the engines. Oh, there was some PDF about some old Mercedes engines, but that's not all. So I'll do this tax horsepower, because in old days the German tax minister, the German tax that did from the size of the engine. No, the taxation is sorry, I'm not English, I'm from Denmark. I don't know all this word in English. So I will read this to make it now. Then is 4 PDF about engines, tax horsepower. Then we got two old engines from 1948 to 90. Yes, if I have to get an old Mercedes, I need to know about what engines inside. This is more, that's 251 to 1985. That could be, yes, in this. I don't know if it's a petrol or diesel engine. I don't know what kind of engines. Is it run on diesel or fuel? I don't know what. Yes, that's a gasoline engine. They are all no, that's a diesel engine. Diesel. They made it all the way to 1990s. But we look at that later. $138. So probably there'll be more engines there later. And that's a modern engine. 2002. That's gasoline. Yes, but let's read this. Tax horsepower. But now I did talk like 5 minutes. I don't think we can do it one video. So that would be a two-parter thing. Yes, I need to do myself ready. Let's read everything.
Tax horsepower. The tax horsepower or taxable horsepower was an early system by which taxation rates for automobiles were reckoned in some European countries such as Britain, Belgium, Germany, France and Italy. Some new states like Illinois charged license plate purchase and renewal fees for passenger automobiles based on taxable horsepower. The tax horsepower rating was computed not from actual engine power but by a mathematical formula based on cylinder dimensions. At the beginning of the 20th century, tax power was reasonably close to real power. As the internal combustion engine developed, real power became larger than nominal taxable power by a factor of 10 or more. Contents: Britain, Australia, United States, Continental Europe, Belgium, France. 1956 formula, 1978 formula, 1998 formula, Germany, Italy, Spain, Switzerland, Japan. Impact on engine design and on auto industry development. References: Britain. The so-called RAC horsepower rating was devised in 1910 by the RAC at the invitation of the British government. 1. The formula is where, is the diameter, or bore, of the cylinder in inches, is the number of cylinders. 2. The formula was calculated from total piston surface area, i.e., bore only. The factor of 2.5 accounts for characteristics that were widely seen in engines at the time, such as a mean effective pressure in the cylinder of 90 psi, 6.2 bar, and a maximum piston speed of 1000 feet per minute, 5.1 m/s. The system introduced a somewhat progressive way of taxing higher value cars more than low-cost ones, but was also introduced to protect the domestic British motor industry from foreign imports. Especially the Ford Model T. Henry Ford's mass production methods meant that the Model T was competitively priced with British-built cars despite being a much larger, more durable and more powerful car than other available similarly priced models. In 1912 Ford opened a factory to build Model Ts in Manchester, to circumvent the import tariffs that, up to that point, had increased the effective price of foreign cars. Under the RAC's formula, the Model T was a 22 tax horsepower car, making it more expensive to run than its British-built rivals on sale for the same price. At first the RAC rating was usually representative of the car's actual brake horsepower, but as engine design and technology progressed in the 1920s and 1930s, these two figures began to diverge, with engines making much more power than their RAC ratings suggested. By 1924 the 747cc, 45.6 cu engine of the Austin 7, named for its 7 HP rating, produced 10.5 brake horsepower, 50% more than its official rating. 1912 Wolseley 16-20C, also 1913 Vauxhall 30-98 and many others. It became common for the name of a model to include both its RAC tax horsepower and its actual power output, such as the Wolseley 14/60 and the Alvis 12/70 of 1938. To minimize tax ratings, British designers developed engines with very long stroke and low piston surface area. Another effect was multiplicity of models: 7s, 8s, 9s, 10s, 11s, 12s, 14s, 16s, etc., each to fit with a taxation class. 3. Larger, more lightly stressed engines may have been equally economical to run and, in less variety, produced much more economically. The system discouraged manufacturers from switching to more fuel-efficient overhead valve engines, as these generally required larger bores, while the established side-valve layout could easily use very narrow bores. Despite OHV engines having significant benefits in economy, refinement and performance, the RAC system made these engines more expensive to own because it placed them in a higher tax class than side-valve engines of identical power output. 3. Despite this, by 1948 the standard Flying 12, a typical mid-size saloon, produced 44 bhp, 45 ps, 33 kilowatts, from a 1.6-liter, 98 cu engine, nearly 4 times as much horsepower as the RAC system suggested. While the RAC system had protected the home market from the import of large-engined, low-priced, mass-produced American cars, the need for roomy, generously proportioned cars for export was now paramount, and the British government abandoned the tax horsepower system, 1, with effect from the 1st of January 1947, 4, replacing it at first with a tax on cubic capacity, which was in turn replaced by a flat tax applying from 1 January 1948. 5. However, British cars and cars in other countries applying the same approach to automobile taxation continued to feature long, relatively narrow cylinders even in the 1950s and 1960s, partly because limited investment meant that new car models often had new bodies but their engines were carried over from earlier generations. The emphasis on long strokes, combined with the nature of British roads in the pre-motorway era, meant that British engines tended to deliver strong low and mid-range torque for their size, but low maximum speeds. The long stroke also meant that piston speeds and the load on the big end bearings became potentially damaging at high power outputs. Many smaller British cars did not cope well with sustained cruising at 60 miles per hour, 97 kilometers per hour, or more, which led to reliability problems when the vehicles were exported to the markets, especially the United States. Cars such as the Austin A40, the Morris Minor and the Hillman Minx all achieved notable initial sales success in the US in the late 1940s, until the short service life of the engines when asked to routinely drive long distances at freeway speeds became clear. Other imports originating in countries with different tax rules and existent high-speed road networks, in particular the Volkswagen Beetle, proved more reliable, and achieved greater sales success. 3. Australia. In Australia, the various states had their own automobile taxation system. Several depended on the AIC formula, but the flaws of this system were well known as early as 1909. 6. Another formula was the Dendy-Marshall formula, which included an engine stroke. Several Australian states used Dendy-Marshall, although Western Australia reverted to RACHP in 1957. 7. The Union of South Africa also depended on Dendy-Marshall, at least in the 1920s. 8. The Automobile Club of Australia's A.C. formula used the same calculations as did Dendy-Marshall formula. 9. The Australian Bureau of Statistics used RACHP in their registration of new motor vehicles, make of vehicles. Australia's statistics until this publication was discontinued in June 1976. 10. Several Australian states also added vehicle weight to the power rating, to get a power weight unit which determined taxation. The Dendy-Marshall /ACA formula is as follows, where equals nominal horsepower equals the diameter, or bore, of the cylinder in inches equals the length, or stroke, of the cylinder in inches equals the number of cylinders. United States. During the early 20th century, automobiles in the United States were specified with a figure identical to RAC horsepower and computed using the same formula. This was known either as NARC horsepower, named for the National Automobile Chamber of Commerce, ALAM horsepower, for NARC's predecessor, the Association of Licensed Automobile Manufacturers, or SAE horsepower, for the Society of Automotive Engineers. This last term should not be confused with later horsepower ratings with SAE. This value is still used for taxation and license fee purposes in the state of Missouri for passenger vehicles, with electric vehicles assigned to the 12 to 23 horsepower bracket by statute. 11. 12. Continental Europe. Although tax horsepower was computed on a similar basis in several other European countries during the 2 or 3 decades before the Second World War, continental cylinder dimensions were quoted in millimeters. as a result of roundings when converting the formula between the two measurement systems. A British tax horsepower unit ended up being worth 1.014 continental, i.e. French, tax horsepower units. 1. Belgium. In Belgium, the tax power depended on the cubic capacity of the engine in cubic centimeters at the rate of 1 tax horsepower for every 200 cubic centimeters, 12 cu in. France. The Cheval Fiscal, often abbreviated to CV from Chevaux Vapeur, literally steam horses, in tax law, is used for the issuing of French registration certificates known as grey cards, cartes grises. It is an administrative unit originally calculated partly from the power of the engine and used to calculate the amount of tax that may be due at the time of registration. The Citroën 2CV, 2 tax horsepower, was the car that kept such a name for the longest time. Its use in France dates from the 1st of January 1913. It was updated in 1956, with further revisions in 1978 and a new emission-based system introduced in 1998. It was originally defined using the following formula, where is the number of cylinders, is the cylinder bore in centimeters, is the stroke in centimeters, is the engine speed in revolutions per second, is a coefficient depending on the number of cylinders, single-cylinder engine, 0.00020, two-cylinder engine, 0.000. Its use in France dates from the 1st of January 1913. It was updated in...
Yes, now I did it again. I did click by mistake because I start to get sleepy, then the auto read stops. To read page by page.
In Belgium, the tax power depended on the cubic capacity of the engine in cubic centimeters at the rate of 1 tax horsepower for every 200 cubic centimeters, 12 cu in. France. The Cheval Fiscal, often abbreviated to CV from Chevaux Vapeur, literally steam horses, in tax law, is used for the issuing of French registration certificates known as grey cards, cartes grises. It is an administrative unit originally calculated partly from the power of the engine and used to calculate the amount of tax that may be due at the time of registration. The Citroën 2CV, 2 tax horsepower, was the car that kept such a name for the longest time. Its use in France dates from the 1st of January 1913. It was updated in 1956, with further revisions in 1978 and a new emission-based system introduced in 1998. It was originally defined using the following formula, where is the number of cylinders, is the cylinder bore in centimeters, is the stroke in centimeters, is the engine speed in revolutions per second, is a coefficient depending on the number of cylinders, single-cylinder engine, 0.00020, two-cylinder engine, 0.00017, four-cylinder engine, 0.00015, 6 or more cylinder engine, 0.00013, 1956. Formula. In a circular issued on the 28th of December, 1956, the Chevaux Fiscaux was defined as where equals puissance administrative equals constant of 0.00015 equals number of cylinders equals bore in centimeters equals stroke in centimeters equals speed of rotation in revolutions per second. The result is multiplied by 0.74 diesel engine. 1978 formula. A new system was announced on the 23rd of December 1977, 13, to come into force on the 1st of January 1978, calculated by the following formula. (1978) engine speed parameter formulas for calculating K1, K2, Kn represent the theoretical speed in km/h of the vehicle with the engine running at 1000 rpm in first, second, NTH forward gears, is a representation of the average speed across the forward gears with various adjustments added for various transmission types. Forward speeds manual transmissions for